Okay.
Hi, everyone. We'll just wait another moment or two to see if we can get a few more of our people logged in, and then we'll get started. So we'll be with you in just a minute. All right, I'll start the welcome. So welcome. This topic is the power and promise of AI, which is being presented by Ammolite Security. My name is Star. I'm Star Monroe. I'm with the BBB, and I'm the organizer of the 2025 BBB Canada webinar series. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us and learn a bit more about the potential impact and applications for AI in the business community. It's a hot topic these days. A few housekeeping things before we get started. So this webinar is being recorded. If you wish to get a copy of the recording, you can email Melissa at ammolitesecurity.com. We'll be sure to make sure her email address gets into the chat as well. And Mike, the presenter, he will share his slides with those in attendance at the end of the presentation. All attendees are in listen only mode, so that means your cameras and microphones are turned off. And if you wish to communicate with us during the presentation, you'll need to use the chat. That's the only way we'll be able to communicate with you. Any text that's put into the chat will be visible to the host, panelists, and attendees, so everyone will be able to see what you put in. And Mike will watch for your questions as he proceeds with the presentation. Before we get started, I just need to take a moment to thank our sponsor. We're very thankful that Petro-Canada and their Super Pass Fleet Management Program is a sponsor of the 2025 webinar series. And all accredited businesses are eligible to get 4 cents a liter off gas and diesel and 25% off car watches. So you can apply online on our webinar page, so at bbb.org Canada webinars. There's an apply button right at the top, or you can reach out to your local accredited business or BBB, and if you're an accredited business, they will provide you with the information, or you can visit the Petro-Canada website on the screen and learn more. We have a nice mix of accredited and non-accredited businesses on the call today. We just like to thank you all for joining us. So this is just a reminder for our accredited businesses that there really is power in the accredited business seal. And we encourage you to take advantage of its power by promoting the seal wherever you can. So on all your marketing materials, your websites, your social media, not only will it help you stand out from the crowd, but consumers really recognize accredited businesses as being trustworthy, reputable, and having integrity in their business practices. So yeah, if you're at a credit business, we hope you'll be shouting it out and proud of it as well. And if you need anything, whether you're an accredited business or non-accredited business, please feel free to reach out to your BBB office. We have a number of offices across Canada with contacts that are willing to help you with anything that you need. And if we can't provide you with the information you need, we'll try and direct you to the resource that is appropriate. And if you are accredited and you need help, or whether you're non-accredited and you want to learn more about accreditation, we're always here to help. So before we get started, I'm just going to go back to this slide. I'm going to introduce our presentation and our speakers. So the power and promise of AI was designed specifically with small and medium-sized businesses in mind. So whether you're curious about how AI can streamline your operations, improve customer service, or better protect your data, we're hoping this webinar is going to give you the information that you need. We're really proud to be presenting it in partnership with Ammolite Security, a leading Canadian cybersecurity and artificial intelligence firm that's known for helping businesses harness innovation while staying secure. They have deep expertise in defense, energy, finance, and the technology sectors. And Ammolite works with both large enterprises and small businesses to navigate the rapidly changing digital landscape. So with us today at the helm, we have Ammolite Security, the CEO. We have Kara Wolf. She's a trailblazing entrepreneur and thought leader in the AI and cybersecurity arena. This year, Kara is recognized as the top female cybersecurity leader from CIO Canada as well as Woman of the Year by Women in Communications and Technology, and she's the recipient of the Queen's Platinum Jubilee Medal for Business Leadership. In addition to serving on several boards and advisory committees, Kara is an advocate for empowering small businesses through secure, responsible technological adoption. And our featured speaker today is Mike Wilkes. He's the Senior Security Advisor at Ammolite. Mike brings a wealth of experience from his previous roles as Chief Information Security Officer at companies like Marvel, ASCAP, at AQR Capital. He's also a contributor to the World Economic Forum's cybersecurity initiatives and a recognized leader in helping organizations adopt advanced technologies like AI in a safe, ethical, and impactful way. So together, Mike and Kara will bring some visionary insight and real-world experience in today's discussion. You should walk away with a better understanding of what AI is, what it isn't, and how your business, no matter the size, can start benefiting from this technology. So let's dive in. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and pass it over to Mike and Kara.
Thank you, Star. Thank you for the nice introduction, and thank you to Petrocan for sponsoring this session. We've been an accredited business with the BBB since we started. I believe we're probably into year 4 or 5 now, and I can't speak highly enough about the relationships that we've formed and the trust that we've had with our businesses and the network that we formed. So this group is an important group. It's important to share knowledge and learnings. We're all in this together. And as new technologies come and new threats come into our businesses, into our cities, into our country, we need to respond rapidly. And we can only do that with the limited resources that we have by sharing information. So it's really important for us to speak to you about what we've learned and what we're doing in our businesses and how we're helping our clients so that you can better fortify your businesses and become more profitable. I'm very pleased to have Mike here with us to do the main presentation on AI and AI security. And I've been working with Mike now probably for about 2 years, and I just can't speak highly enough about his expertise, level of professionalism, and amount of knowledge that he can share by distilling very complex information into short sound bites that we can all digest as business owners and business leaders. To go into a little bit more about Mike's background, he's a former CISO for Major League Soccer. He has built, transformed, and protected Security Scorecard, ASCIP, Marvel, Capital, ING Bank, CMA Group, Sony's, Macy's, and many other global brands that we're all familiar with. He's recognized as a technology pioneer, providing thought leadership and cyber resilience in the oil and gas industry, as well as quantum security working groups with the World Economic Forum. He's a featured speaker at Black Hat, Gartner, GovWare, Secure World, and SANS, an adjunct professor and risk on cybersecurity and risk management at NYU and Columbia, and he's also an author and a Stanford graduate. His most recent publication was on cybersecurity resilience for advanced manufacturing. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Mike. I welcome all of your comments and questions. The best way we learn is through interaction, so please don't be shy. And Mike, take it away.
Hi, let me get my presentation over to you. Now, let's see. So I need to click this, and I need to share sound. So thank you for those kind and warm introductions. And yes, we're 10 minutes in, and let's get to the content. So I'm going to gloss over my own logo slide. But thank you, everyone, for joining. I think you're going to enjoy hearing some of the things I have to say, some of the questions that I'm going to pose, and some of the examples that I want to share with you. So this is a little bit about me, some of my logos. Again, I could spend forever talking about some of the things I've done. I've been very fortunate to be the head of information security for Marvel, where I like to joke it was my job to keep Iron Man safe, at Security Scorecard, a security ratings vendor, which works very closely with a lot of Canadian organizations and businesses, member of the World Economic Forum, and most recently the first CISO for Major League Soccer. But enough about me. Let's dive in. All right, so there's some key terms that you may not be familiar with, and so I thought we should start here. I studied philosophy in college. I like to make sure that we have good definitions and no assumptions about what words mean. So why does AI matter, right? I think everyone's realized at this point, ever since ChatGPT sprung onto our collective consciousness in late 2022, or for most people, probably 2023, it is boosting efficiency. It's unlocking amazing possibilities. And we need to understand some of its potential, and we need to understand some of its limitations. So this session, I want to help familiarize you with concepts like machine learning, large language models, Gen AI, RAG, and multimodal AI. So ML is machine learning. And spoiler alert, there really is no such thing as AI yet. Everything that you see and that you are hearing about is really just gussied up machine learning and token prediction engines, and has been anthropomorphized to make us think and feel that it's an artificial intelligence. And we have benchmarks of it taking the MCATs and other exams, but really it's not what I would call, as an actual philosopher on the subject of artificial intelligence. We don't have AI yet, but I'll get to that in a minute. Generative AI is a term for generative artificial intelligence. So it's not just doing analysis and coming up with some sort of ways of summarizing vast data sets and understanding intent and things like that. It's actually able to make original art and original music now. And it's all based on things it's been trained on. So at some level, you can actually think of large language models as copyright infringement as a service. But again, I'll get into some of the criticisms of what's going on in the industry in a minute. And then RAG is an interesting term that you may have heard of, which is retrieval augmented generation. And this allows you to extend the capabilities of a generic LLM with a specific set of documents and an internal knowledge base for your company. So if you set up a RAG, you're able to basically not worry too much about sharing all of your private, confidential, sensitive business information with a third party, especially if you're running that model locally, and you then use a RAG approach to train it, like I said, on your history of your organization, how you function, its own policies and procedures, and it can then answer questions even more accurately for your use. And then lastly, multimodal AI is everything that came after text, essentially. So the first modality that was used with these interfaces was text. You type in some words, you get some words back. Now, of course, you can get images back. You can get audio back. You can get video back. And what's more important, you can actually provide audio and images and video as input to a large language model now. And that allows for a greater context in the desired kind of outputs that you want to achieve. So for example, I took an MP3 recording of a string trio that my daughter had composed a piece for the New York Philharmonic. It's pretty cool that she's in this composition program. And I thought, what's the AI going to do with this song? Because it doesn't have words, right? It's an instrumental piece. And I gave it a little bit of a prompt, and then I told it to compose some lyrics around this piece and the emotions and sentiment and feelings it had. And it did a really good job of coming up with some lyrics. And then I asked another AI to put some music to those lyrics. And so you can basically, play with endlessly recursive, chained together functions of AIs, LLMs, and in the APIs, the application programming interfaces, the APIs that connect them all. And that's one of the things I want to talk about on the security front, but we'll do that in just a minute. So what do we know about the foundations of AI and machine learning? At its core, it refers to these systems that can do cognitive work, right? It's not out there shoveling snow. AI, at least not without robots attached. It's learning and it's solving and it's helping suggest, answers to questions around data and doing this decision making. Of course, machine learning is technically a subset of AI, but like I said, I don't believe AI exists. What we have right now is a lot of ML that folks are believing to be more advanced than it really is. Especially, when you look at, like I said, the anthropomorphization of the interface where it's typing out the words in real time. It doesn't have to do that. It's a gimmick. It's part of making you think that it's a real, intelligence and potentially human type intelligence on the other side. It's unfortunate, I think, that the term has been applied to essentially two types of models, deterministic and probabilistic. One of the things that we're doing is playing around with large language models that are probabilistic, which is why they're capable of hallucinations and coming up with lying and answers that are untrue, references to articles that don't exist. It feels like it always has to give an answer. It's kind of like a kid that doesn't know that lying is not a good thing. Even though for the creators of ChatGPT at OpenAI, it is actually still a bit of a black box to them. It's fascinating to think about. There's this concept called temperature when you're looking at probabilistic models. When you dial the temperature up to like 99 or high, 100, the answers are really boring that come out of these things. But when you dial it the temperature down to around 80, to 85%, sort of probabilistic, you start to get interesting answers and you start to get novel outputs that people enjoy. You also have, some chatbots that lie and mislead due to hallucinations. But in general, it is a black box, even to the inventors and creators of this technology. The evolution, early beginnings. AI and ML has been around since the 50s and the 60s. There were all sorts of things. And if you think about it, even, Turing and the Turing test, Alan Turing had this idea that could you arguably not be able to distinguish whether you're talking to a human or to an artificial intelligence. And so that's one of the first litmus tests that had come up. And Turing, of course, was known for his, computer and the imitation game in the movie about the machine that cracked the Enigma code in World War II, the German encryption algorithm. Of course, there was a resurgence, I think, in the 2000s and 2010s that had to do with basically more computing power came into existence. More people had access to more computing power. And of course, a lot more data was available. And so algorithms started to get trained, and there was a renewed interest in doing this. And so suddenly, of course, we have this watershed moment. It's definitely a lot of hype, but there's also a lot of power there. That's why I entitled it The Power and Promise. What we see is the emergence of these things like ChatGPT 3 and 4. I was actually advising a PhD student at NYU in the civil engineering PhD, actually, on using GPT 2.5. And this was back in 2022, I want to say, early 2022. And so I co-authored a paper with him on how to do structured and semi-structured document analysis using that model. But of course, 3.0 is the one most people heard about. 4 is what's out there now. And so there's iterations, of course, on ChatGPT 4 from OpenAI and lots of other models. And we'll get into those in just a minute as well. But anyway, there's a huge wave of excitement, as you're aware. Real world applications. In my mind, I think one of the best matches for this sort of token prediction engine. And in this case, words are tokens. And it's really good at assembling all of the right words. So governance, risk, and compliance, GRC. I really think GRC is a great match for these tools. Why? Because most policies and documents that you need to write for governance are publicly available and publicly shared. And so you don't have to worry about sort of super secret intellectual property or divulging data, right, accidentally by interacting with these tools. For example, you walk up to a prompt and say, assume the persona of a conservative lawyer, and that because you got to make sure you identify personas when you do certain types of prompts. If you want the AI to do, or the LLM to do a better job at math and to not make stupid math mistakes, you actually have to put in a prompt, assume the persona of a mathematics professor or a mathematics teacher or a mathematics scientist. And then it actually doesn't make stupid math mistakes. But anyway, my favorite is assume the persona of a conservative lawyer and write me a BYOD policy. Right? Bring your own device, something that everyone needs to have for their workspace. Do you allow personal devices to connect, to read email? Do you allow people to use personal laptops? Do you have a company issued laptop for everyone? You can get a really good start on writing these kinds of policy documents by using, these tools. And of course, it has been trained on millions, if not hundreds of millions of similar documents. And like I said, it assembles all of the right words. And you just need to tune it and tailor it and edit it to make it true for your organization. Because what it says might not be actually how you function as a company. You might not actually allow BYOD, or you might only allow BYOD, right, for developers that are working in a development environment, but not for administrators that are working in production, for example. Creative industries, of course, are being disrupted by the capabilities from generating art, so you don't have to pay for, what's the Getty Images, right, or Shutterstock to have images in your slides, like the ones in this presentation. These have been generated through AI. And as I mentioned or alluded to previously, it is kind of like copyright infringement as a service. There's a bunch of legal precedents and cases that have not been decided yet as to whether or not it is allowed to go and scrape all of this information on the internet and generate these models, especially when you're talking about code, right? Software and like GitHub and code repositories. Why? Because there's very explicit licensing around the use and reuse of that code. And if an AI is able to copy a snippet of code and then present it as its own work, that's actually copyright infringement. So anyway, those cases haven't been decided yet, but creative is definitely being impacted here, where everyone can do a quick mock-up, reasonably good images. Sometimes they're quite scarily insightful images, actually. When you ask it to give me a picture of a cat, right? People love cat photos. I've got one on a slide later on as well. And then healthcare and diagnostics, AI algorithms have actually gotten really good at detecting disease in medical images, like cancer. There's actually an algorithm that was trained to be able to discern the difference between Japanese pastries in Japan. And it turns out somebody on a lark just used that model, and instead of showing it pictures of Japanese pastries, because they needed to know how much to pay or how much to price them and put them in the window and what was the name, there was hundreds of different kinds of pastries. Anyway, this Japanese pastry model turned out to be really, really good at detecting cancer in medical scans and images. And so it's fascinating to think of some of the serendipity that might be applied and is being applied here when you do crossovers in training. I have a link to that article in the slide notes, and you can get a copy of these slides just by sending an email. I have a QR code, which is a mail to tag at the end of the slides. And that way you can get a copy of it and go read these articles that I'm referring to. Next up, there is a dark side to AI and ML. There's this thing called adversarial AI. AI systems can be exploited. Malicious threat actors, they generate deepfakes. They can automate cyber attacks. They can improve the quality of phishing emails so that now there are no typos. There are no all caps. There are no grammatical errors, potentially. And of course, they can amplify lots of misinformation campaigns and disinformation campaigns. And convince people to click on things, of course, in phishing tests and smishing tests, and modify, every single email that gets sent out. Instead of one-to-many, it's almost a one-to-one messaging that's happening. There's also challenges and dark side to this sort of bias that can be in algorithms. AI ML algorithms can perpetuate and amplify societal biases, leading to unfair and discriminatory outcomes. And of course, job displacement. Everyone worries a lot about job displacement, but I do think that you're not going to be replaced by a script, but you are going to be replaced by someone who knows how to use these tools, right? And in that case, it's useful, like I said, to have these webinars, share information, get people familiar with some of the concepts. There are a couple of job markets, of course, that are straight up being challenged by the capabilities of these cognitive workloads that AI and ML can perform. But in general, I do think it's the repetitive, dull, boring aspects of those jobs that are delegated or relegated to an LLM or to an agentic AI chatbot. And you then get freed up to do the more interesting work as a human. One of the adversarial AI articles, this one was from 2017 in The Verge, which is a magazine that talks about the edge of technology. And they were certainly covering adversarial images, AI images that were actually fooling artificial intelligence. So what you see here are images of individuals wearing these fooling glasses. The glasses have been colored intentionally because they know what facial recognition algorithm was used on the system. And so the image on top is what you see with a normal eye, and the image below is what the artificial intelligence and facial recognition thinks it is seeing. And so they're actually tailored, colorful manipulations, almost like a scatter plot, to convince the AI to fool you into who's actually there. So I think this is one of the interesting elements of paying attention to what's called overfitting. So when a model has been trained so well on a data set, the adversaries can actually abuse that fact and say, okay, we know exactly why it thinks that this particular actor or actress is looking like this, even though the actual video or actual image that you would see as a person is confusing because you clearly wouldn't mistake this top row of images for the bottom row, but the machine algorithms they can. And so that's one of the things that they can do. And if you, for example, put a few pieces of tape, right, maybe white reflective tape or something, very strategically on a stop sign, you could potentially convince a self-driving car that it's not a stop sign, and it would just drive right through the intersection and potentially jeopardize drivers, and safety. So these are the kinds of things where physical objects can actually be imbued with capabilities that are used in cyber attacks. And so that's one of the things that I wanted to mention. Next up, another adversarial AI, of course, is the innovation that's happening in the dark web with threat actors. They obviously move more quickly than the rest of us. Why? Because they don't have laws and rules and regulations that they have to adhere to. So Google originally came up with something called Bard, and they rebranded it as Gemini. But when it came out, there was folks that were training up a version of Bard, and they called it Dark Bert and Dark Bart. And they were able to build, petabytes of dark web breach data and exfiltration data and information about all these secrets that have been stolen from these attacks. And they were able to make it possible to create the ultimate chatbot and say, I want to break into a company. This is the name of the company, and this is the current director of customer support. Help me figure out what kind of malware attack I should apply to this company. And it has all of this information that it's harvesting on that. And it comes up with a novel PowerShell script or a piece of malware that's never been seen before because it's novel, it's new, it's been innovated, but it's a derivative of something, but it doesn't trigger any virus signatures, right? Because it's a brand new executable or a brand new approach to stealing credentials or having some type of other payload, right, delivered in the email or in the Word document or PDF or whatever. So they've been really good at innovating on this. And like I said, we, the defenders, right, of the digital world and the digital economy, we are not able to pivot and innovate as quickly. And so I sometimes refer to this as the democratization of crime. One of the things that these large language models are doing is allowing script kiddies to attack with nation state level tools, really powerful tools. And these script kiddies used to be sort of made fun of in the past because they didn't understand the malware that they were copying and pasting and convincing someone to click on an email. But now you have these threat actors like Lapsus, Scatter Spider, that are actually composed of bored teenagers that are just doing it for the lulz. Indeed, it's gotten to the point now where Mandiant will bring a high school guidance counselor onto a ransomware call because crimes are being committed by victims of bullying. And so these guidance counselors are there to help them get through that. Because sometimes they're not even asking for ransom. Sometimes they just want to have the ability to brag and impress their friends or their bullies. And they will breach, and they have successfully breached billion-dollar companies, like I said, just for the fun of it. And so we used to have to deal with nation states. We used to have to deal with organized crime. Now we have to deal with them, plus a cadre of bored teenagers. One of the other things I mentioned, algorithm bias. If you haven't heard of Esther Dyson, she's a brilliant systems thinker and scientist, and also a serial entrepreneur. And she had this great quote that I like to have some of my students read about. No system in the world is so well designed that it can't grow stale, rigid, or corrupted by those who benefit most from it. And so I think that's a really powerful statement about systems and systems theory. Systems design is not, however, entirely tool-based endeavor or the eventual outcome of rigorous attention to process and engineering technique. I think it also has to include a sizable aspect of people and their attention to the possibility of using technology to take charge of our lives and our future, and not just become victims of advancements in science and skill. So in this slide, I wanted to emphasize I can't emphasize enough the importance of thinking about our technical choices when we are introducing or advancing these complex systems. Management of technology can and should include ethical decisions about artificial intelligence and teleological conversations. What is something for? And the purpose that they serve rather than the cause by which they arise. And so here you can tell I'm waxing philosophic on this concept. But there are other sources of AI bias besides algorithm bias, which I'll talk about on the next slide in a minute. These other sources, training data bias, of course, we've heard about this. If it's trained only on white people, it doesn't do facial recognition detection very well on non-white people. And it can also begin to identify more non-white people as criminals, and the police systems can be targeting people just because data wasn't trained, on a diverse population of faces and colorful skin tones. There's cognitive bias built into all sorts of things. I can talk about that as a whole separate lecture. There's also measurement bias, feedback loop bias, interpretation of the data bias. There's all sorts of things that we have to be worried about. Eventually, there ought to be some type of practice in compliance and in society, I think, where we actually have bias audits. And we go in and we try to interrogate these models and make sure that they're not entirely black box and make sure that they don't have some of these biased outcomes. One of the things here, there's a book that was written by, I think it was Michael Kearns. Let me pull, Michael Kearns and Aaron Roth, called The Ethical Algorithm. And it refers to this really wonderful concept that most people have not heard of that I want to share with you called differential privacy. It is a system of sharing publicly available information about a data set and describing some of the patterns within that data set, but withholding the privacy of the information of the individuals in the data set from being public. So another way to describe differential privacy is a constraint on the algorithm that's used to establish aggregate information about a statistical database. And it limits, like I said, the disclosure of private information or records whose information is in that database. So allegedly anonymized data sets are routinely leaked, and they often leak sensitive personal information because statistical models can be used to sort of combine data sets and sort of reintroduce, the individual's data into those data sets. So if you combine publicly available data and then anonymized data sets, you can actually merge them. And it's statistical models that are used to sort of game these search engines and spam filters, online reviewing services, reviews, navigation apps. It's actually possible for us to embrace privacy in algorithms with a concept like fairness and other ethical terms are a little bit harder to approach. But fairness is something that can be injected into algorithms. And this book talks about that. So we should try it in the code now before or wait until regulators get around to asking for it after the fact. So this is a link to the 2019 book that was published on the ethical algorithm. This one's fun. Let me throw this into the chat right now, just because you can ask for the, at least I think I have access to the chat. You can, if not, maybe someone else can throw it into the group chat. I don't know if you see this. I think it just went to the hosts and panelists. But basically, it's a deep fake Ryan Gosling talking about what is ChatGPT. So it's using the technology and the tools, right, to deceive and deep fakes. And it's using Ryan to explain it. It's hilarious. It's really a great YouTube clip. And again, it's in the slide notes. I just threw it into the chat. Hopefully someone else can populate it into the group for all of the attendees to see. Otherwise, you'll have to get it later. But there is some potential job displacement happening for actors and actresses. You may have heard of Scarlett Johansson's voice being appropriated without her permission for ChatGPT 4.0's demo. And she's suing them for that because they asked for permission, they didn't get permission, and so now they're asking for forgiveness, and of course she's suing them, as she should. Graphics designers, definitely a lot of graphics people are being displaced in their work by the ability to just have images and infographics and slide decks put together in a few seconds. And they're really quite good. This one's a screen capture, obviously, from the video, so I didn't have a deep fake, image prompt here. This is actually just a slide, or one frame from that video that I wanted you to watch around deep fake Ryan Gosling. Anyway, it does a good explanation of explaining how ChatGPT works and tokens and token prediction engines in probabilistic large language models. But the other thing I wanted to mention is software engineers. I would say not so much displacement, even though the folks at NVIDIA and others are talking about how everyone's writing code and it's the democratization of software development called vibe coding. But really, it just allows everyone to go from like everyone can write shitty code now, essentially, right? And not just developers. Just like continuous integration and development, CI/CD pipelines in software development allow people to release shitty code faster. It doesn't improve the quality of the code. And there's research that shows this, right? Participants who had access to an AI assistant based on OpenAI's DaVinci Codex 002 model, they wrote significantly less secure code than those that didn't have access to it. So security is not baked in, right? These best practices, because again, it was trained on all the code that exists, and all the code that exists has bugs and logic flaws and security vulnerabilities. So why wouldn't the output from an AI also have more insecure code? So it's going to generate more code, but it's going to be more insecure and crappy code. Job displacement, though, does have a place in the music industry. So there's the Elvis Act and there's the No Fakes Act. The Elvis Act is from Tennessee, the first state to introduce, and it stands for Ensuring Likeness, Voice, and Image Security Act, aka you want people to get paid if you're going to have someone write a song and have it sing it in the style of Elvis. The Elvis estate thinks, and I do believe and agree, that they have some kind of claim, right, to any revenues that might be generated from a hit song that was fake, composed through an AI. And then the No Fakes, which is nurture originals, foster art, and keep entertainment safe. This is a federal bill, at least in the US, and there will be other legislation like this in other jurisdictions and other geographies around the world, and I presume in Canada as well, where you have people like Shawn Mendes, for example, as an artist, and he would not want everyone to be able to make indistinguishable deep fakes of his songs, for example, or at least not be able to make some return on investment on that. Let's see, what else? How does it work? Yeah, that was what I typed. Oh, good. Good. The Better Business Bureau posted my YouTube link for you all to check it out. And then, of course, there is another element of humor. And I don't know if you've seen this comic, but I think it's awesome because it captures a lot of the craziness of what's going on right now. AI turns this single bullet point into a long email that I can pretend I wrote. And then on the other side, AI makes a single bullet point out of this long email that I can pretend I read. And so in my mind, that just captures a lot of the crazy kind of stuff that's happening right now with these tools. But let's move on past this funny side of AI ML. My own work in the space, I am a part of a Amazon Web Services cybersecurity startup accelerator initiative. And so I'm advising a cohort of 36 startups in cybersecurity that are using AI and ML in collaboration and support from CrowdStrike and NVIDIA to redefine their go-to-market strategies and their vision for introducing these tools to make it easier for us to defend against threat actors. I'm also on the Teaching Generative AI Tools working group at NYU, and we just had a meeting this morning, and it's been great. We've been meeting for the last 2 years, once a month, just talking and sharing links and research, and I post on my LinkedIn some of the really cool articles that have come up on how teachers are embracing the technology, because we can't be like a 1960s mathematics teacher lamenting the advent and the introduction of handheld calculators. Right? No one's going to know how to do math anymore. No, it's not true. People still do math. People still need to think about numbers and measurements and, and different concepts. They just don't have to do some of the rote, calculations anymore. And I think the same thing would have been true when the abacus was introduced, right? Hundreds of thousands of years ago, or however long ago. And they're going to say, oh my God, people won't be able to count on their fingers anymore because they're going to use this abacus, to do calculations. So I think it's an overreaction, or at least we need to embrace the tool and not fear it as faculty and staff. And then, of course, I've been doing work in the GRC function based on AI. There's been a lot of mobile coaching app for Lark. This was a company that I was the CISO for based in California. that had a mobile coaching diabetes prevention and weight loss management AI function, essentially. And this was like 10 years ago. So it wasn't really probabilistic large language models. It was more deterministic, like a phone tree, interactive voice response on a phone. But in general, this technology has been around for a while, like I mentioned in the first couple of slides. But then, of course, along came GLP-1s and Ozempic, and everyone can take a pill, and then they don't get diabetes and they lose weight. Of course, that's just such an American kind of phenomena, right? I don't have to do the choices, the tough choices about eating well, right? And having good diet and nutrition and exercise. I can just take a pill and lose weight. But anyway, so I think there's some interesting developments, of course, in that area. And then there's been a bit of a personal rabbit hole where I've spent many hours just lurking on mid-journey Discord channels, just watching what people create and looking at them iterate and revise their prompts and, chaining various tools together. It's just fascinating to just sort of watch as a spectator on these Discord channels because they're open and you can see what people are generating images for. Myself, this is where I will share with you a quick musical interlude. Hopefully you hear the audio.
Yo, mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the weakest link of all? Is it the system, the vendor's flaw? Or the IELTS chilling in the hall? The stadium's lit, but the risks are higher. Legacy tech mixed with wires on fire. Third-party hooks, they're the silent spies. No alerts, then the threat just multiplies.
Gotta keep it moving, can't let it slide. Continuous monitoring eyes.
So I won't play the whole 3-minute clip, but I gave a presentation at Secure World in Boston. And just last week, I gave the same keynote at Secure World in Philadelphia. And the title of my talk was Mirror, Mirror on the Wall, Who's the Most Vulnerable of All? It's around third-party risk management. And I didn't want to use copyrighted music, right? Like have Eminem's Lose Yourself or something as the walk-up music. So I actually took my presentation, put it into ChatGPT, and said, make some lyrics based on this presentation that I'm giving you now, and or actually the presentation I made for Secure World, not this one. And it came up with some great lyrics. I tweaked them a little bit, made them a little better, and then I put them into another tool called Suno.ai and said, give me a jazz, hip hop, trumpet feel, and it made that song. And it made those words, and it's a great song. The people were jamming out to it when they were building out the stage area. And so for me, this was fun and playful. And there's a link to the SoundCloud if you want to listen to the whole track in the slide notes for Mirror, Mirror on the Wall featuring Professor Eclecticus, which is kind of my pseudonym as a presenter. And a handle that I use, I guess, is my superhero name. Anyway, it was really fun, and it was not, like I said, not bad. It's come a long way since the first, versions of these songs have been created that are AI generated, and again, trained on real musicians and real artists and trumpet players and hip hop artists. The other thing I played around with, everyone's seen this meme by now, right? Which was an action figure out of yourself. And so I'm Professor Eclecticus. That's been my handle or name for many years. Ever since I was at Marvel, I was thinking, what would be my superhero name? Anyway, so I said, make this action figure of myself with my Stanford diploma, the real book, right? Because I'm a jazz musician. I like to include jazz in my analogies and metaphors when I can. And of course, it was great to see and fun to see. I put in a picture of me speaking at Secure World, and it put me in the right clothes. Maybe it took a little bit off of my tummy. My belly is a little more round than this action figure. And then one of my colleagues did this. He turned it into an animated GIF. And so AI is capable of doing these amazing, fun things that are just, amusements, right? But there's real work potentially going on here in this technology as well. Not just having a talking, Mac using Professor Eclecticus in a box. So let's see, 45 minutes in, I think I better run to the end so we can get some questions. So the work of others, right? So OpenAI, of course, creators of ChatGPT, leading the charge. It costs about 40 cents every time you ask it a question. You're not paying that 40 cents, or at least most of us aren't. We're using the free models, but some people are paying for it. And eventually we're all going to pay for it. Why? Because it's very expensive to build these models and to train them. And eventually this freebie is going to become, non-free. Google offers Gemini, which is a powerful multimodal. It's embedded in all your Google Drive docs and services now, so you can't get away from Google's Gemini. Microsoft has Copilot and integrating AI as a security Copilot as well. That's going to be continuing to be in your face as well. Apple had a very tempered rollout of Apple Intelligence, which is great because they love to promote, individual security and privacy. And all of these tools are kind of the exact opposite of that, right? Taking everything you write and say and think and pushing it out for someone else to analyze. You have no idea where that data is going. So Apple's been slow to get at that, but I think that they've been doing this intentionally. That's part of their brand, right? It's part of their purpose is to adopt things more conservatively, right, than just sort of hell bent on a $5 billion or whatever kind of hype cycle. Anthropic has developed Claude, which a lot of people like using, which is an AI assistant, which has some elements of safety and ethics, which were issued when OpenAI fired Sam Altman and a bunch of people quit. Then Sam Altman came back. And so Anthropic is sort of a safe haven for folks that still want to believe in having safety models and ethicists on staff. And then, of course, various threat actors, like I said, Darkbert and Darkbart, making chatbots and other players out there. There's a bunch of them also listed in the link in the slide notes. So can't talk about AI without the art of prompting and the LLMs. Be specific. Clearly state your desired outcome and provide any relevant context. Like I said, assume the persona of, and then fill in a blank, and you get better results. Iterate. Just play with this stuff. Maybe not about your most crucial life, questions about, should I, leave America and move back to Europe? There's all sorts of bad questions you can ask that you can ask for amusement purposes maybe, but I wouldn't take the advice literally. Certainly investment advice. One of the things that I have to point out is when ChatGPT 3 had a Wikipedia page, one of the things that was on that Wikipedia page was don't ever use this for healthcare. Or at least for mental services in healthcare. Why? Because in a token prediction engine approach to problem solving, the best way to solve the problem of depression is to kill yourself. And that is not a good idea for a health chatbot to say, oh, you're a worthless person. You should go eat some worms. Nobody likes you. Everyone hates you. That is not the kind of token prediction engines that we should be using in the healthcare services. And of course, use examples. Upload a photo and say, can you make a photo that looks like this photo? One of the biases whenever I ask a chat, tool or generative AI tool to generate an image, it's usually dudes. And I was like, give me a bass player, right? An acoustic jazz bass player. It's always a dude. It's never a female jazz bass player, and they do exist. And so you have to make sure that you inject that. Say, please give me a female hacker, right? Please give me a female board of directors, right? You shouldn't have to prompt it that way, but you should if you want to have more diverse and representative images and outputs. And then, of course, avoid assumptions. Don't assume it knows the specific context or the information provided. But anyway, play with the stuff, get good at it. Prompt engineering and skills. It's like knowing what question to ask the librarian in the library. You don't want to say, give me an interesting book to read. They have no idea what book to recommend as a librarian or as a chatbot or an LLM. Right? Give it some context saying, I kind of like this book, and this is something I read recently that I've been thinking about trying to find an author that's similar. Same kind of thing with prompting. Use context, avoid assumptions. Responsible AI. Developing ethical frameworks. This is something that's emergent. It's not there yet. This is still the promise. We need to develop and have guidelines around what types of principles, ethical principles we have with using everyone's data, because everyone's just giving it up right now, right? Typing it into ChatGPT. Samsung, I think, was one of the first victims of oversharing. They had someone that's like, oh, I know, I can take all these meeting notes from our strategic planning meeting and write up and have AI write up this really great, summary. And of course, now all that data is in, the publicly shared model, and people can find ways of extracting that sensitive business strategic plans for Samsung out of that mistake. So they made one of these early gaffes, if you followed the news on these types of things, and just don't put in proprietary information into a public model. Get your teams to build or download the local models. They can work within 2 gigs, 4 gigs of memory on a laptop, even with something called Ollama. But anyway, that's a tool for you to check out, not in the speaker notes, but that was just something I was talking about recently with someone. Transparency and accountability. How do we promote transparency and decision making? Because it's a black box and it's unaccountable. You can't put, an algorithm in jail for fraud on a financial system. So we shouldn't necessarily have agentic AI as financial advisors, or as deciding whether someone's guilty or not. Right? You can't have AI judges. There's always going to be a human in the loop for these kinds of things. And then, of course, the human-centered design. We really need to focus on this and not just have a world of robots and a world of profit-making engines, that are self-fulfilling prophecies that consume more resources conspicuously. I think we need to have a much more sustainable approach, especially because the energy required to build these models and the data centers that they run in are not cheap. If I remember recently, I think it was the first year into ChatGPT, all of the energy needed to train 3.0 was equivalent to like the entire energy consumption of like a small country like Ireland. And so these data centers that are going to be built and are being built to support the hunger of this hype cycle is going to be there for a while. And then, of course, collaboration and oversight. How do we fostering of community and collaboration between government, developers, private sector, academia. Here's a couple of tips for small business. Tactical decision making. AI can analyze data faster and more accurately than most manual processes. So you can help small teams do tactical, informed decisions without having a full data science department. Of course, your mileage may vary. Hallucinations and mistakes are still possible. Data-driven strategic planning. So you could have an AI sort of shadow CEO that's there, and you just ask it questions like you would, in the olden days of Greece, where they walk up to a temple and they pray and they ask the oracle, "Oh, oracle," or "Oh, Zeus," or "Oh, Athena, please tell us, whether we should plant our crops now or in 2 weeks, for a good harvest, or will we go to war against the Spartans and win, that kind of thing. There are strategic plannings that are not just instincts, right? It can be based on longitudinal data that's in these models. Faster innovation cycles. We talk about this, producing marketing copy or at least drafts of presentations, as long as it's not sensitive, right? Anything that's going to be a part of marketing will eventually be public, right? Classified as public data. But if you're marketing something that's really innovative and it's not public yet, you might not want to use a public model. You might want to use a private, locally run model to ask it questions and come up with, some interesting catchphrases or something, product ideas, images, things like that. And of course, to enhance customer experience, Salesforce is all over this, right? They have this thing called Agent Force, and they want to have an interactive experience inside of Slack and other tools where you say, is this a customer? What's their average contract value? When do they renew? What's the likelihood of them churning? These are all the kinds of things that can be done as a back office agent. But you can also do customer experience and client-facing things and deliver big brand experience, with a small budget. Now let's see a little bit more on the future of AI. So I think what I did with here was I crossed out the word will enable, right? And it's now just enable, because multimodal, when I gave, a similar presentation, I was talking about the future of it. It hadn't happened yet, right? 4.0 is when multimodal started to happen. Anyway, so I just strike it out and say that let's, work on these advancements. Let's pay attention to these capabilities, this next generations and iterations of capabilities. It's cognitive work. That's what these things are doing. And it's usually low-level cognitive work, not the most, genius level that humans are capable of. And I have a great quote at the end to leave you with, but let me try to get to that slide because I'm running out of time. Multimodal AI images is input and output, not just text. Responsible AI adoption, let's deploy with responsible and ethical thinking around these governance and frameworks. And let's not forget the unprecedented amount of compute that goes into these things. So there's a waiting list for data centers right now to be built. That need new power plants because we don't have enough power plants to power all the data centers. So the Industry Electrical Association is projecting a global electricity demand from AI and data centers and crypto to rise to they're expecting the global to rise to 800 terawatt hours in 2026 just for this function. As its base case scenario, it's nearly a 75% increase from the 460 terawatt hours that this AI data centers and crypto have consumed in 2022. So the agency's case calls for more demand to double to over 1,050 terawatt hours in the near future. So big tech is putting a whole bunch of capex investment into this, right? 35% year-on-year growth recorded in 2024, and the investment likely upwards of 200 billion to 210 billion, predominantly in building AI infrastructure. So that's a Forbes article I got those numbers from. Here is my requisite AI cat photo. Legally and privacy implications. Obviously, there's a lot of risk here of people just copying and pasting random data into prompts. And where does it go? Where does it go from an agentic chained, set of one LLM and AI calls another? There's so many different, risks here. And so I won't read these, talking points out. You can look at them later. There's, of course, bias and discrimination, intellectual property concerns, and the obligatory cat photo. And then lastly, conclusion. We need to stay agile and open. We need to play with the stuff, get familiar with it. Don't be like a 1960s mathematics, professor lamenting the invention of a calculator. As professors and teachers, we can't believe that our product, it was just teaching people how to write 2,500 word essays, right? Because now that can be done in a few seconds, and they're not really learning. They're cheating themselves of the learning process, the learning journey. It's not just about the output and outcomes. Continuous learning needs to be a part of our mindset, because life will become interesting if we let it, and if that is what we want, right? A utopia rather than a dystopia for the future, instead of Margaret Atwood's, Handmaid's Tale, which we seem to be living in at the moment, unfortunately. But anyway, responsible stewardship. That's one of the key priorities, I think, for well-being in this future. And then lastly, where do we go from here? Autonomous orchestration, adaptive autonomy, anything that would come after the word agentic AI. Machine-led innovation, autodidactic integration. And then here's my final thought. Human knowledge is like sunlight. LLMs are like moonlight. This was from a student, actually, at a symposium that we had at NYU. I think it captures this concept that we all need human knowledge. We can't have life on Earth. It can't sustain, the carbon life cycle process without sunlight. Moonlight is just a reflection of human knowledge. LLMs are just that, a reflection of it. So we live in a magical time. Privacy is still possible, but we need to make sure that we enjoy some of the frivolity of being human and stay alive and stay engaged. So here's a little bit of Q&A, but you can ask your own questions. And lastly, here's the QR code if you'd like a copy of the deck. And I will send you a copy with all the hyperlinks and references that I made. So thank you. 2 minutes for questions. What do we got?
Mike, there's a couple up at the 9:46 mark on the chat.
Okay.
You want to?
I can only go back to 12:04.
Oh, yeah.
But,
okay.
you're saying 12:46 my time.
12:46 your time, yeah, sorry.
Do you think that the intelligence is evolved enough to create medical consents? I practice off-label and not from, or in practice off-label and not from guidelines. Oh, that's an interesting one. I do think that there's a space, for everyone to have sort of a sidekick, right? To have a lackey, right? Cliff notes on steroids. Doctors can use these cliff notes on steroids. They can read the patient history and summarize it and synthesize it, and get, good context quickly. But I don't know that medical consent could be provided by an AI, if that's the question. I think that there's still always going to be humans in the loop, because you need to have someone that you can throw in jail, right? Or someone that you can fine for making a dumb decision that ends a life or empties your bank account. Let's see, what else? What is the best, most efficient, most user-friendly chatbot to use on your business website? I don't have a fast answer for that, but there was something I looked at recently called Laravel, and using Ollama. So Ollama is like I said, a smaller footprint that can run on 2 gigs on a laptop or on a server. And there's some really quick integrations that can happen there for playing around with it. And then you're not calling an API and spending thousands of dollars, towards Sam Altman's and other companies. So I would look for free, Ollama integrations that can be done for your websites, and play around with it, obviously, in a space that's moderated and controlled. Because a lot of times when these things were introduced first, like there was one that Twitter did, I think Microsoft created. It was like kind of like a Clippy, follow-on, and it turned into a racist, homophobic, misogynistic bot, within like 5 hours, right? Because it gets trained on what people say and do, and it modifies itself. And so you have to be careful about moderated, discussions and interactions like that. How can I get a copy of the presentation? You can ask for it by email, or this QR code will generate a mail to tag, which will open up your mail, and a pre-populated email address and subject. But yeah, if you want a copy, you can also get it. The recording will be made available through Melissa at ammolitesecurity.com. Any other questions popping in at the end now? Thank you for your positive feedback. How do you spell the chatbot? Olama. Yeah.
Karen's just following up about she's wondering if it could write a consent form for her, even though she's not in a mainstream.
Oh, I see. Yeah. No, it can write an excellent consent form, especially if you say make it like Canadian, like legislative specific. Make that part of your prompt. Olama is the tool. OLLAMA. You can install it on Windows. You can install it on a Mac. With the Mac, you can install it with a tool called Homebrew. And then you can say, okay, run this little version of a small footprint LLM locally.
There was another question. What's the best free AI to create an app?
Oh, those what was the one that I was playing around with myself recently? I forget. Let me change my browser here real quick. Free app dev AI tools. Maybe it comes up. Lovable is one I've heard a lot of folks have been playing around with. Lovable can create mobile apps with a mobile interface, through what's called vibe coding, where you just say, but of course it generates really insecure code that will be breached quickly. So don't go live, on day one. Bring in a security consultant like Ammolite or others, to help people prepare for the attacks that come, right? Because the vibe coding reduces the barrier to failure faster, right? Epic failure sometimes as well.
Great.
Excellent. Well, we kept a lot of you, I think. We have a good 69 participants from what I can see in the live recording right now. So thank you for your attention and for letting me wax philosophic and tell stories for the last hour.
Yes, and I'm just going to switch over to the wrap-up slides from the Better Business Bureau. So again, if you guys need anything, please don't hesitate to reach out to your local BBB. We're always happy to answer your questions. If you're able to scan the QR code on this one, we have a survey that we're sending out, and we'll also send that out by email just to get your feedback on what you thought of this particular presentation. If you have any other thoughts of future presentations you'd like, again, if you want a recording, just reach out and we'll get you a copy of that as well. And you're invited to join us at a future webinar. So our one in May is becoming an employer of choice. You can register for that on bbb.org/Canada webinars. And we hope to see you there. And that website as well will have all the webinars that we're hosting throughout the year posted. If you want opportunities for learning as well, BBB has some online courses and certificates. Accredited businesses can get them at a discount. So it's bbb.org learning, and they're on all sorts of topics. There's some AI ones in there as well. And yeah, we invite you to join us again at one of our future webinars, and we really appreciate your time and energy that you spend in expanding your minds and learning more to make your business stronger and better. And I'd really like to thank Mike and Kara and Ammolite Security for volunteering their time to share this information with you. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.